Hey everyone, Dave Greco here and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to go over kind of the first steps that I go through when starting an illustration. One of my favorite things to watch is other artists in that kind of beginning stage where they're really starting to figure out a piece. I love sitting back and watching that, and I feel like a lot of people like to watch that as well. So I'd love to kind of start a new piece today, and I'll kind of talk my way through it, how I block things in, how I get some initial ideas, and how we work from there. Let's get into the illustration and let's talk our way through it. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna keep the camera on in the lower right corner for y'all today, just so I feel like I can interact with you and you kind of see me painting as we talk about this piece. So I've been working on this kind of new world and new IP stuff with someone else. We've been collaborating on ideas. He's been doing a ton of sketches for me. And so I want to take one of his ideas. And then kind of extrapolate it into like a world and a character. And so that's what we're going to start with. So basically on a brand new canvas, I usually have something around like 3,000 or 4,000 pixels wide. This one is actually around 72 DPI. I will upres it to 300 when I first start doing the sketch. I don't mind keeping the piece small because we're staying loose and trying to figure out everything. And so it's going to be a character and an environment. And instead of just having a character with just a white or gray background, sometimes I like to incorporate a little bit of the story in there, and it helps me kind of figure out the character and design it and see what we can do going forward with it as well. So sometimes I like to make like a little ground plane, and right here for my brush I'm just using the DG main brush like I usually do. It is quite the habit. So this character is actually very interesting. And it's almost like a centaur, but it has like a different shaped bottom to the body. So like when I'm first starting a piece, I like to keep my hand moving quite a bit. You know, I don't want to get bogged down too much. It's almost like I don't even take my hands off the canvas. And I like to just keep moving around, trying to figure out what kind of shapes are going to work. Everything. I'm kind of referencing some early quick sketches. And then basically I'm taking the sketches and then figuring out a lot of the details. I might change some shapes. I might change some ideas. Maybe the little sketches just give me an idea for something else. And that'll give me a lot of direction, kind of figuring out what we might want to do for the piece. I have a couple kind of quick ideas. So it's this kind of like female centaur type warrior woman, but I think we're going for some like different vibes with the piece as well. I'm not sure too much of the pose. I think we can change some of that. Like I said, I want to stay loose and just figure out some kind of areas where the nose might be, the mouth. She's smiling. Yeah, this is the stage of a piece that's always the scariest I talk about, where it's like, I don't know. We can make this work, what we're really shooting for. But, hopefully you can find some shapes that you can attach yourself to. And I really want almost like a stormy sky with a little color in the horizon. Almost like with a kind of like a Scottish or Scotland vibe to it. That is a vibe I got off the earlier sketch. We probably won't show the sketch since we don't really have approval for the who I'm collabing with about it. I'm very excited for getting some of these things worked out. And so we're finding a pose that may make the upper body a little bit smaller at one point, make the head smaller. But I want to always remind myself to keep my hands moving pretty quickly. Like even some ideas of where there might be like clouds in the background, which is some like quick shapes. Maybe these were some type of larger rocks or structures. And then I think it's almost like she has a like more of like a lower, like a tauntaun type body. That's kind of like more kind of what it is, with these like pretty large feet. I think we're actually going to lift that up and bring this up some. And I think we're gonna have this one's more the one that's kind of on the ground. We also have a Marlowe that decided to join us for this painting session. So I think we're gonna bring this leg back a little bit, and it looks like it's kind of coming back here. And it's almost like this kind of like thick lower body, which is kind of cool. So we're gonna figure out how that shape's all gonna play out here. One great thing too, you can kind of lasso parts and Control C will grab all the layers, and you can kind of transform it, move the shapes around. And maybe she's got her arm up. And more she's kind of like holding like a strap around her chest, holding everything. She's got this really cool staff. The design that was made initially had it a little bit different. So I'm going to take some liberties with it and kind of figure out some different shapes that might be happening here. With all the decorations and everything that could be around it. And she actually has some almost, can't tell if they're actually kind of like tattoos on her face. So that's something we'll figure out. So even like I was saying before, we're still keeping it loose. Trying to figure out what we're doing. This is the way I work generally, because I don't spend a lot of time doing thumbnails. I'd rather kind of throw myself into a piece and kind of figure it out as we go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's worth spending that little bit of time and to really explore it. And that's why I'll spend the time in the black and white here doing it. And then I can just worry about the value and all the shapes and everything that kind of entails with it. I really don't know what kind of her armor and stuff looks like. I think she's got more kind of like upper armor up here. I'm not sure what's going to be happening with this lower body. It seems like it's probably gonna be more kind of like fur or like a light hide or something. I think the whole idea was pretty cool though. It was unexpected when I had the design sent over, which I thought was very, very cool. And so like all this right here, still using the DG main. You guys can find a link to my brushes, which I know a ton of people have grabbed already. The brushes are on the Gumroad right now. I had to get them up there. Dropbox said we were getting so much traffic on the previous one that they kept banning the link for it. So thank you all for the support for hitting that up. But it up on Gumroad does help a lot. We have made a huge step. We are finally a full-time freelance illustrator. After 16 years as a concept artist in the game industry, we have taken that plunge. That took me a very long time to make that step. It was a bit of a scary jump, but with all your support you guys have, I owed it to everybody here, absolutely. Obviously, she's going to have, I think, some hair that comes out, gets tied up in this kind of knot, and then comes over into, you know, she has to have overly long hair. I can't help myself sometimes. So we're going to create motion and shapes. You know, right now the back of her leg coming back feels a little weird, but it's okay. I don't think you need to get hung up on a lot of these kind of details at this stage. You're kind of just figuring overall silhouettes out and kind of what you want to do with the piece. We haven't, you know, figured out kind of like lighting direction or what the actual scene's going to be. That's okay. You know, we can just take our time with it. And this is always this is a stressful part of the piece, but also a very relaxing part of the piece, where you're really not tied into anything. You're not diving into like a lot of the small details, if this lighting is working properly, or armor details. And that type of rendering is always fun, but this part of that piece is pretty nice as well. And so maybe at this time I might kind of zoom in a little bit. It's a little low res before we up res it, but I think that's okay at this stage. Because we're still just doing these kind of like larger shapes. And we're kind of figuring out how it's all gonna go. Because ultimately we'll up-res it, maybe we'll do some like line work to really establish the whole piece. So here we can kind of just figure out where her actual jaw and cheekbones and all that actually lay, and her neck, everything. But we can still keep it pretty loose. Her eyebrows are, but we're not diving into any serious detail, which is kind of nice. Yeah, and then we can really figure out the kind of anatomy of her face and her whole look. You know, what expression she actually wants to make on her face. I think it'd be cooler to have her kind of looking towards the camera. I think that'd be kind of nice, instead of just kind of looking out into nowhere. Which is kind of a eye pose I do quite a bit with a lot of my work. Something I'm trying to work on. And I think something we really are going to start working on, especially here on the channel, is more and more creature illustrations. I need to spend more time getting into creature design and feeling more comfortable in that space. And so that's something I think with some more drawing with days going forward, we could start exploring. I don't want her to look too squat, which is I think happening a little bit here. I think maybe her head and everything is still a little too large. I'm constantly just grabbing tons of the piece, lassoing around, shifting it. And you can even take like, oh, there's like the eyes look a little too close. I can do the same thing. Move that over. And same thing with the other. And this is how I usually, even when I'm starting to prep pieces that may go to an art director for black and white approval, I think the best thing to do is like just get an idea on paper before you can send it over, you know, because you need to do that before you send it over. And so if you can get something pretty simple down, you know, I don't mind working kind of far away while we kind of hammer this all out. Really just kind of diving around and figuring out these little silhouette parts. And then we can actually kind of figure out where her arm actually is. If she is holding something up here, we don't really have to figure out a lot of the fingers and stuff yet. I'm just kind of figuring different planes and what might work. And so if she does have some satchel over, I do think I want her eyes more kind of closed and looking down at us. You can kind of see that there. And we're going to change up some of these shapes down here. And you're definitely just not locked into anything. You can always keep moving this stuff around and seeing what works and what doesn't work. See, she's got kind of like a tauntaun lower half instead of like kind of a full centaur, and I think that's cool. And then maybe she has stuff with other claws draped around the bottom here. I feel like she should almost be like some type of like clan leader. You know, we're creating a lot of these characters and kind of discovering really what we want to do with them. We're not entirely sure yet. We're just in a world of exploration, which feels pretty nice. And so she's almost kind of walking through this little ravine, or not a ravine, but these little inlet of little rocks. And what actually might be cool, and I start to see more of the piece as we continue to work on it. And so she could have this more kind of like orb that's trapped inside this staff right here. But maybe also through all this and down here, this is more, we'll do some quick sketch, but this is more kind of like little pebbles and rocks. And then we could, almost like a really small shore. And you could have like a little bit of water coming down. And I think that would actually be pretty cool. Because then we would get, sorry for the follow alerts that are popping up. I do record this through OBS, and those are follows from the Twitch channel that do come in when I'm not online. So I appreciate it for people that do hop over and follow when I'm not there. And then, like, once we're doing the water, we could actually get a little bit of reflections and rippling. And, we'll go quick right here. But that might be kind of neat. I almost thought about we could even do more of a scene that was in the forest instead of kind of, I had this idea at first that this was more kind of stormy sky in the back. And we have a little bit more kind of light and color towards the horizon. It's also something where she could have been kind of going through a part of the woods as well. And sometimes worthless, just make a new kind of folder layer in there and what that might look like. Like I started thinking about all these ideas and how that may influence the lighting of the piece as we go. And so we'll just kind of line drawing this in real quick. What if back here, this was part of these old trees. Let's see here. And I'd like to try to think of some interesting shapes for how all the trunks and all the trees might be. And if this kind of creates this big shadow up here of this large canopy, we could have kind of breaks of light that come through. We could do something like that dapple lighting, or really maybe a lot of all her up here is a lot in shadow, and then we have more kind of light happening down here that's coming through, right? And that could affect how total mood of the piece, and we could totally change it. And I think this is a great stage to kind of explore that and check it out and see if it's going to work or not. Yeah, she got some really cool kind of armbands and gloves on. She'll have this pack and this staff. I thought would be cool, and we could really explore these up too, and kind of curves around, and maybe it has more of these kind of crystal baubles. They're all tied up, and other little kind of mystical things that might hang off it would actually be pretty neat. Yeah, so we're still going around, and I think it's just good to keep moving around the piece, figure out some new ideas. We could have these, tall grass and other kind of rocks that she's kind of wandering through. That could give us a lot of cool shapes and ideas, and I'm really liking that whole idea, everything that's happening around here. Because then, we're doing more than just figuring out a character. And that's what always has pushed me beyond from just doing concept art of a single character. I just love figuring out the environment. I love figuring out that story that it might be telling. And sometimes it creates other characters that we'd even think about. Like, what if there are other creatures that lived in this woods that she's going through that are, allies? We have them sitting on the rocks here. They're doing their own thing, and this is, little, little warrior pixies or something, or who knows what they are. And they're kind of letting her pass through this area, right? We're just creating kind of these general blocky shapes. I don't know what their designs are, but we're creating a world that exists and is breathing and kind of tell a story. We don't know what the story is, but that's what's super, super awesome about it. And we can start to, and we just create these shapes, and I don't really know what they are. Yeah, so we're still using the DG main. I'm just changing the brush size kind of over and over, see what works, see what doesn't. We have a bunch of stuff, and we can even have, what actually might be cool, now I'm thinking about it also, is that back here, we maybe have there's a whole caravan of them. They might be kind of really in the background, but she's kind of leading the pack of them. And they're kind of blurred out back here. And so that tells a story if she's leading this whole troop of them. Oh man, I really like that. This piece has already become so much more than what I thought it might be for us to start. So this is definitely a piece we're going to be continuing to paint on the Twitch channel as well. So if you guys aren't following over there, it's just twitch.tv/DaveGrecoArt. We do spend a lot of time on there kind of talking and painting. And then chat usually makes me do a bunch of push-ups as well. All right. Yeah, and we can figure out different kind of patterns that might exist on them. That could be kind of cool. I want to get rid of this right here because I want to see actually where her body and torso actually is. It's been a little hard to tell. I'm going to kind of cinch this in, and then we can repaint the hair in if we need. It's always good to kind of step back from a piece if you can. Especially on these videos, I get a little engrossed, and sometimes I think I don't step away enough. Maybe we can make her neck a little bit longer. I think she should have a really heroic vibe to her. There we go. And then how that kind of comes back here, and then we can figure all the lighting for all that stuff as well. Yeah, but I think that I really like the idea of having these kind of they're really pretty large feet. And then we can even try to, have her footprints that can be seen back here, but I really like this kind of water, and we have some other rocks back here. This is gonna be nice when you do a really kind of clean line drawing of this whole thing. I really enjoyed doing line work lately. Sometimes these little tree line shapes can just remind me in the sketch that this is a tree kind of coming up back here. And we can do some cool stuff as far as the shapes. I think finding just interesting shapes to use over and over. Maybe these little things are flying around too. It could be a pretty busy piece. But the whole time I'm kind of looking at is the movement of the piece okay? Is the character okay? I mean, the character is kind of centered in frame right now, which is probably not ideal. Maybe we might shift her around. But also sometimes a character center can also work, and that's something we can easily play with. Yeah, I'm starting to figure out kind of some of these highlights. And we're still staying pretty zoomed out. We don't need to up-res and go crazy on the detail just yet. We're still figuring out a lot here. It'd be cool if some of this light actually came from behind a little bit. We'll have to see. I think finding an interesting lighting scenario for her is going to be a big major part of this piece, and how we make that work for us. Right? And I don't want to start kind of rim lighting her all around, just flatten her off the bat. So we'll have to kind of see how we want this all to work. Yeah, it's nice to kind of stay zoomed out. So let me know with the comments below, do you like seeing the whole process of me starting a brand new piece, I mean, it's only been about 20 minutes or so. I'm really starting to block it out. And I think this is my favorite part to watch of any other artist, to see how those initial ideas get down on paper, because it's such an important part. It's one thing to watch them render an eyeball or something for like an hour, which is interesting. You can learn a lot from it. But they're kind of just repeating the same process over and over. But I think the creativity and trying to figure out what you're putting down and how that works can just greatly affect how everyone else is treating their own work and how they can bring that process in to creating. And I'm not saying this is the best way or the perfect way. This is how I work, and this is how I create the pieces that I do create. And so I would just trying to share my own process with everybody else. So we'll get those little, kind of see your eyes in there. But yeah, I think this could be something that's pretty cool. And we'll have to go and dive down into everything, kind of figure out how this staff works. This crystal thing, I think, is pretty sweet. I mean, there's a little gap right here where it holds this. And this can kind of have this like swirling magic inside. You know, I love drawing fantasy stuff, you know. I do kind of try to do my own slight take on how it looks, but you know, I had someone ask me recently what's like my comfort zone when I go back to what do I love. You know, I just always love that kind of fantasy world and setting, and that's really where my heart is so much of the time. You know, she could have this attached to other stuff that she carries. And so actually at this stage is actually pretty close, where I would up-res and we'd start working on a line drawing. We probably won't get into that phase today, but I can show you kind of what I might do for the next step. Really kind of just showing the idea of where her feet, and you know, she has like these, they're kind of like, we have to dive in and kind of figure out like how we want to treat claws in her. It's not like she has like reptile feet. So you'll have to kind of figure out kind of what is going on as far as kind of the skin texture and how that all feels. She's got this, and this part of this kind of chest plate has these kind of parts of her that mirror different parts. Like this kind of like orb looking thing is also attached here. That's pretty similar to what's on her staff. You know, maybe there's other kind of little attachments, you know, and then it's also similar to little baubles and stuff that exist up here. So we can all kind of try to tie that into the same character. And so really what I would do for the next step, and I give you guys kind of a, you know, a peek of what we would do. So the image size right now, it's pretty small, about 1700 by 1000 at 72 resolution. Always, I'm going to paint at least 300. So we're going to up-res that to 300. Assuming my computer doesn't explode. Okay, and so we basically have 7200 by 4200, which my computer can handle pretty well. So I actually like painting at that resolution. I may drop it down like a tiny bit sometimes. You know, sometimes like I say maybe like 6000 by 3500 at 300 resolution should be good. In case this ever needs to get printed for anything, that should be fine. And a lot of people ask me about my layers quite a bit. And really, my layers are really, sometimes I have a purpose for them. A lot of the time I don't. This piece already, I could totally flatten it. It's flattened. I can paint over whatever I want. I like having what I've painted already, have it exist and sit there. It's fine. And then we'll make a new layer. And you could do this so many different ways. You could have just copied this to a new layer and then drop the opacity on it. But for me, I don't go to pure white. And then I just drop a layer and then I change the opacity on top of it. And so it's like putting a piece of tracing paper over your drawing. And then this is the stage where we can slow down. And again, I just use the DG main brush. DJ main, I drop the flow down, usually to about 60%. Yeah, I drop the flow down about 60%, and then I click the always use pressure for size right here. And so instead of, go to black here, instead of just having a square brush goes down, if I take the pressure off, you know, I'm going to get like a finer point. And I actually end up doing a lot of my line drawing like this. I can get some more kind of like nice flow to the brush with this, and it still has a little bit of texture. But this is the part where I slow down and then start going over and really figuring out, okay, so how is she actually going to look? How's the shape of the eyes actually going to be? Her brows. You know, actually figuring out her nostrils, everything, right? And we can start to relax and really figure out what we want to do with the piece. You can zoom in and really get the detail in, but this is really kind of where we spend that time. Just to make sure we get some pretty close anatomy, and don't feel like you're stuck to this drawing underneath as well. Like as I start to go down and figure out, we'll do this kind of quick, so it's not gonna be super accurate. Once we get the neck and everything down here, I might go over it pretty fast and just make sure we kind of have some anatomy that's, you know, semi close to where it should be. Pretend there's no armor on at all. And then let's really figure out all her anatomy. And then we can start putting everything on top. And so just, it should make sense underneath. And so it's like, oh, so if her arm's here, where's her bicep and where's that actually going to connect to her elbow? And all those little things that should always definitely be figured out. You know, especially with the bridge of her nose. Is it going to come out to there? Is she going to have more kind of like a pointy nose? Which I always like. And, you know, we're figuring a lot of that stuff out now. And then, you know, figuring out the placement of the ear. So it's just a nice little place to take a break and really figure out what we're doing. We could change a lot of the shapes of the hair in this phase. See, I can't stop now. You guys have me sucked into this piece already. I'm already at this stage where I can't wait to flesh this thing out and figure it out. All right, thank you so much for hanging out with me today for the first, it's about 30 minutes of process on how I start almost every single illustration that I do. If you guys have any questions or what you'd like to see in the next video, definitely comment down below and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. It means a lot, helps the channel grow. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.